I said the Lions won a game. Man, we going all the way.
Welcome back to the best podcast in the state of Michigan, talking every level of football in the Great Lakes State. We are Great Lakes State Football, and we are co-hosted by myself. I'm Vince.
I'm Kory.
And I am Brett.
We're trying to come up here with an intro. We're still playing around with the format. We'll see how things go going forward, but we're getting there. We're getting there. This has all just been a work in progress. So this is episode 8, talking everything football in the Great Lakes State from the last week here. Very sad news. Football has ended for all state of Michigan teams, with the Lions playing on Sunday. Every Michigan team is officially done for the season. Before we get into, we do have a few topics we're going to talk about here, obviously with football kind of ending here in the state for the season, getting into the off season officially. There are a few things we're going to touch on, talk about the national championship game, as well as some recruiting topics, and then a little debate on the NCAA playoffs, the expansion of the playoffs, and kind of our thoughts on that. And then we'll wrap up with the Lions. And Kory is our recommendation of the week. We started last week a new segment that we're going to start doing every episode going forward, where each one of us recommends something that we are loving on at the moment, whether it's a beverage or something of our choice. Unfortunately, Brett is under the weather. Yours truly had COVID last week, and now Brett, our other co-host. I promised that we were not making out in the last week. Brett did this to himself. He got it on his own accord. How you feeling there, Brett?
Feeling pretty good. Yeah, Sunday was a little bit brutal, but here it is, Tuesday evening. It's not getting any worse. It actually seems to be getting a little bit better. So hanging in there. Kory, watch out.
Kory is not feeling too great either. He just got boosted.
I got boosted and I am dragging ass today, but it'll be all right. I'm going to go to bed after this, wake up in the morning, and hopefully feel alive.
Well, with that, we're going to try and pull these two along here for the episode. I got your back, gentlemen. We'll get this thing going here. So we're going to kind of open this up with a topic with high school football, high school recruiting. Obviously, the high school season's been over for a little while now, but we did, as we mentioned last week, have 4 players from the state of Michigan play Saturday, January 8th in the All-American Bowl game down in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. Josh Burnham, Nolan Ziegler, Jaden Mangum, and Miles Rouser. Kory, going to kind of follow up with this topic. What do you got for us here?
Yeah, no, so did some deep diving. Pretty cool that these 4 got to go play in the game. Some of them had some really good weeks. Joshua Burnham, he actually won the East MVP per On3. It's just pretty much a recruiting site that was showcasing this game. But anyway, yeah, Joshua Burnham, great week, MVP. He's enrolling early at Notre Dame, which is pretty cool. And he was just getting tons of love from a couple different outlets. They're saying how quick to the ball he was. One of those things, too, that's interesting, we all played football, and especially in an atmosphere like this, you're not really trying to light anybody up, or you're not trying to make any spectacular plays in practice. But they did say he was just a ball hawk. He was around the ball the whole time. He was tagging off. He pretty much first one to the ball with no problem. So that's kind of cool. And then Nolan Ziegler, also known as a wild man, he flipped from the east to the west. He actually played some safety, which is kind of interesting, being a linebacker in high school. And then he made the all-effort team per On3. So 2 guys had really good weeks. Couldn't find any information on Jaden Mangum or Miles Rouser. Mangum's going to MSU. Rouser's going to Arkansas. So it'll be pretty interesting to see how their careers pan out, being some pretty big-name kids from Michigan. But no, it was a good week. After doing some deep diving into the All-American Bowl, it sounded like they got hit with COVID really bad. They lost a ton of players, and just a lot of kids weren't able to participate, which kind of stinks for them. Kind of a cool atmosphere doing something like that. One thing we did talk about, which is also interesting, and I want to get your guys' input because we bounced this around last week. What if you get injured? Should kids start treating this game like a bowl game?
I don't know. I think they should just show up, get their drip, and go home. I don't know why. I mean, what's football if you're not lighting people up? Honestly,
yeah,
you might as well go and dance at the middle school dance.
Exactly.
It sounds like none of us caught this game. I honestly forgot it was on. It's kind of like the Pro Bowl, but for high school kids, obviously it's not really a game that I feel like a lot of people are going out of their way to watch and pay attention to. Before we got this going, we were all kind of struggling to find any sort of a box score being reported online, other than a few articles talking about individual commits, performances in the game. I don't know if I would play. It's hard to say because none of us got invited to a game like this. None of us were all American high school players. So I don't know if I had the opportunity, maybe in the current state of things with how aware people are of draft stock and, potential playing right away and the landscape of college football. I don't know with that injury looming and how quickly, your career could kind of spiral, downhill with one catastrophic injury.
Look at the Alabama wide receiver.
Game. Yeah.
Jameson.
ACL done.
I now that you're mentioning that, Vince, I think it just dawned on me. It might be a good idea to play just to market yourself.
Yeah.
In today's transfer portal world, I mean, if you go to that game, you're meeting a ton of other players, going to a ton of other different schools, some of which you might not have met on the camp circuit. So
if
it doesn't work out at school number one, you can call up your buddy that you met at the camp circuit and try to get an in to go play for his team. But aside, what's that?
No, go ahead.
Aside from that, there's more at risk than there is to gain.
I think so.
So the big rumor mill going around with the whole transfer portal thing, and it's a TikTok trend that somebody informed me of. Guys are transferring where their booth-angs are, and it's
you shared that with us.
It's a pretty relevant thing. I mean, the list is long. It's crazy.
Did you not share that with Brett? I thought you shared.
I did. I thought I sent it to you both.
I thought you did too.
Know.
Right, you'll have to do some digging tonight. It's pretty crazy. I mean, the list is long. So
must have missed that text. Now you got me curious.
Baby mamas are just flocking people.
Yeah, it was a TikTok video of some guy going through every major transfer, how they transferred to a school where their girlfriend was at.
Yep.
The WAPs are magnets.
And Brett made this podcast NC-17 very quickly. No longer family friendly. All right. Do we want to add anything else here on the All-American Bowl?
No.
The only other thing that I was going to add was Notre Dame led all teams with 11 commits invited, 10 of them dressed. So one of them must have either had COVID or was injured. But that's pretty crazy that Notre Dame had that many players in the All-American Bowl. So talk about, like Brett mentioned, making contacts, building relationships. That's pretty cool for them to have so many guys in their freshman class getting to know each other before they ever set foot on campus. And two of them are the Michigan guys, right? Josh Burnham and Nolan Ziegler, both going to Notre Dame. So pretty cool.
I will say, one more thing just dawned on me. Back in the day, when it was the Army All-American game, what was neat was before the early signing day, there was a lot of kids that would commit at that game. Whereas now there's only a couple. So I think that's what used to draw a little bit more attention to it was all the big time commitments we're announcing at that game. And you don't really have that anymore.
Yeah, because now with this early signing period, everyone's committing so early. I mean, they can't play this game any earlier than that. I mean, maybe they could. They could probably put it somewhere in between the bowl games if they wanted, I guess. I don't know. But
I remember the last time I watched the All-American game, this was probably 3-4 years ago. I'll never forget they had like 22 kids recruiting like during the game. And they had it like on the teleprompter, like before, like at some point during the game, they're like, all right, at 3 minutes left in the second quarter, Bosley Blah from Utah is going to commit. And then it was just like literally like every 10 minutes, which is crazy.
Yeah, that was fun. It was entertaining, especially when the game is just kind of, I don't know, it's like flag football.
Yeah.
Well, moving on here to some more recruiting news for one of the Big Ten teams here in the state of Michigan. That's Michigan State. Just added a late flip. Big time transfer from Washington, Jeremy Bernard. Very interesting name. Jeremy, Germie. So Jeremy Bernard Geez, oh, Pete, that's hard to say too. Jeremy Bernard is a 4-star wide receiver out of Washington. This was what news
Last
today,
week, I think.
yesterday. No, the 9th, January 9th,
Yeah.
excuse me. So a couple days ago. So pretty big, big time ad from the transfer portal as Mel Tucker continues to take advantage of that.
No, not from the transfer portal. He's from
a flip. I'm sorry.
He's from Washington. He committed to Washington. He signed an NLI to Washington, and the NCAA granted it like rescinded, and he signed at Michigan State, which is crazy.
That is how does that work? So are you just allowed to do this now? You can
If you get released, I'm sure you can get out of anything if you get released.
So the Detroit Free Press, it says he announced on Twitter a day after officially cutting ties with Washington, where he had signed a letter of intent in December, from which he was granted his release on Wednesday. So last Wednesday he was granted release, signed with MSU a couple days later.
That's pretty dirty that MSU did. They must have been talking to him the whole entire time.
Yeah, what's crazy
though, I wonder how that works.
The old NCAA rule, there ain't no way he's getting cut from that. No way.
Say it again.
Like the old NCAA, how they would rule on these transfers and things.
Oh, he wouldn't be allowed to do that.
No. Hell no.
I'm surprised he's allowed to do that now. So Brett, you're saying with the current rules, the only way that would be allowed is that Washington just granted him his release.
You gotta get released by the school that you signed to. I mean, if they don't release you, you can't get out of there.
Washington just was cool about it, apparently, and said, all right, see ya, I guess. That's
evidently
crazy. That is crazy. I can't believe wild.
I would keep myself cautious with this kid. I bet you this kid transfers 2 more times in his college career.
Yeah, that is troublesome. That is worry. That
he will end up at Ferris calling it now.
Where's the baby mama?
247 Sports had him rated as the number 33 wide receiver in the nation. So pretty good land by MSU, but I agree with Brett. That is a very worrisome situation. I am not going to be optimistic about that. That player with that context that he just signed a letter of intent and a few days later said, nah, screw it. But anyway, hopefully that pans out, but I'll be cautiously optimistic. Moving on to University of Michigan news here. Harbaugh kind of been in the news ever since the college football playoffs ended here, especially within the last week or two. Staying or going, my fellow co-host Michigan fans here. How are we feeling about this?
Kick it off, Brett. Let's hear it.
It's the same thing. He's going to stay. He's a simple man. He doesn't have an agent. Everything is handled on his own. I'm sure he has some sort of financial advisor, but he knows exactly what he wants, and he's going to get what he wants. He knows he has so much leverage at Michigan right now, and he's in such a good position with the program. He can pretty much squeeze Michigan out at any penny that he wants, and they're going to pay him because of the season he has this year. And there are some options in the NFL. The Raiders have been the main option for him to land, primarily because he used to coach there. He was a quarterbacks coach there, and he has a good relationship with owner Al Davis. And also his wife has some connections to Las Vegas. She used to live out there early on in her career. That's actually where her and Harbaugh had first met, was in Las Vegas. Could be. Yeah, I don't know. They didn't say. But I can imagine Jim Harbaugh was a big weirdo in the strip club.
Do you think he goes in khakis?
He probably pays for his dances in origami dollar bills.
What?
Give me a chew, a Diet Coke, and some WAP fresh off the stage.
Do you think he takes his shirt off in there too?
Oh gosh, he doesn't have any trouble taking his shirt off at youth practices. But no, it sounds like if it's not the Raiders, it's probably not going to be anywhere. And with the Raiders making the playoffs, it's only going to delay things. And as the owner of the Raiders, it makes you wonder, like, why don't you just stick with the coach that you have? I mean, the team's performing well. You lost one of your best wideouts this year, Henry Ruggs, to the drunk driving accident. So, I mean, I would say they have a pretty successful season. And Darren Waller, the tight end, has been injured for, I think, the last 4 or 5 weeks. So, pretty good season for the Raiders. So, I don't see why you would fire a coach after making the playoffs. But coming back to Michigan and what they should do with Jim Harbaugh, they should make him the highest paid coach in the Big Ten. He deserves it. He went through the absolute doghouse last year. He bet on himself and he won. So you got to pay the man. And if I don't know who you're going to get better, honestly. So pay him
That's
when
the
he
big
wants.
question. That's the big.
They have
better?
the money. The Michigan's president, Mark Schlissel, who isn't really fond of athletics and funding athletics, he's in his last year. So it'll potentially give Jim the opportunity to be part of the interview committee for the new university president. And they need to give him resources for NIL. Everyone says Michigan puts together great NIL packages, but I'll believe it when I see it. Let the money do the talking. Texas A&M has the best NIL packages supposedly in all of college football, and you see the class that they just put together. Michigan
what makes the best NIL packages?
Money. How much money are you going to give your players?
Private donor money,
among other things. So Texas A&M said they had, I think I had read they have roughly $30 million of money towards sponsoring their football players. I mean, it's divvied up in different ways, but that's quite a lot of money. I mean, that's roughly, if there's 100 players on a football team, that's almost $300,000 a player. So that's a lot of money.
And I did read
Matt Ishbia for MSU did for all the Michigan State football and basketball players. Basically, paying them an annual salary as long as they're at the university for sponsoring his company.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that.
You guys didn't know that? Yeah, he pays every player on the football and basketball team, regardless of their status or starting. As long as you're on the team, you get paid like an annual stipend from Matt Ishbia as long as you put like on your social media and like promote his company.
Yeah, that's a very touchy subject. I know some people that worked for that company, or worked, I should say, and he does not pay their employees very well at all. And when that announcement came out, a lot of people set sail because
really they quit. They were pissed about it.
Yeah,
he's a billionaire. I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, he'll be all right.
No, I'll back Brett up. I don't think Harbaugh's going anywhere. Stephen Ross, who the Michigan business college is named after, just came out from Miami and said he's not going to take.
I was just reading that.
Yeah, he's not going to take Harbaugh from Michigan, and a lot of the other teams have already started interviewing, and names are popping up all over the place. And Harbaugh's name's not really popping up for interviews, but it has been super quiet in Ann Arbor, kind of murky. Not a whole lot of like legitimate talk going on. So that's the only thing that kind of sucks. It doesn't give you any hope. But I agree with Brett. We gotta get together with Jimmy Boy, give him what he wants. You're not going to find anybody better. Not saying he's the best, but you can't tell me this coach could come in and be better than Jim Harbaugh. There's just I don't see a name out there that makes me feel that way.
And why would he want to leave? I mean, his entire starting offense is coming back, and they, aside from center, and they just picked up the Remington, one of the finalists from Virginia, a transfer. Defense,
All-American.
All-American, and they haven't really had any coaching attrition. I mean, they lost their D-line coach Sean Nua, but his OC,
he was probably the weakest link of all the coaches, though. I wasn't a huge Sean Nua fan anyway.
Potentially. I mean, you can't argue the way our defensive line played this year, but in the big scheme of things, I would say that he's probably one of our weaker coaches. But I mean, he'll reload, but he's had a lot worse situations at Michigan, and he's come back. I think that's what makes me the least worried.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then some rumors are swirling around that the TAMU D-line coach followed Michigan football and Harbaugh's son, and a couple, I think Aiden Hutchinson and a couple other things. And he was like the number one rated recruiter in the country as well as a D-line coach. So it sounds like we might be pulling him as well, which would be pretty damn sweet. But it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter until Harbaugh signs and football's back on, baby, and we can keep talking about it. So
I just hope he figures this out before like signing day, because there's still some big guys. So there's still some big fish left in the pond.
I hope he figures this out this week, or else I'm going to have a heart attack. So I'm very anxious right now.
All right, you guys want to move on to the national title here?
Sure.
And in the second SEC championship game of the season, Georgia beats Alabama in the rematch in the national championship 33-18. Pretty boring first half, 9-6 halftime score.
It was pretty entertaining, even though it was 9-6.
It
was
was
a Big
really,
Ten football game.
Yeah,
They said, "Welcome to the Big Ten."
Yeah, it felt like Big Ten football, and then that second half really kicked into high gear as what was it? I'm trying to think, do the math here in my head. 36 total points scored in the second half, right? 15. Yeah, 36 second half points scored after only 15 in the first. So pretty crazy second half there with some weird scoring because of some 2-point conversion attempts failed and a bunch of field goals. So, yeah, very weird score, 33-18. I called it. I said there's no way Alabama beats Georgia twice. I think some of the past Alabama teams maybe beats this Georgia team twice, but I felt like this Georgia team was too good and played too well against Michigan to get beat again by Alabama. And I thought Alabama showed weaknesses all year. They got beat by a Texas A&M team that ended up having 4 losses. They should have gotten beat by Auburn and LSU, 2 teams that were not very good. And I just felt like other than the championship game, Georgia otherwise dominated this year. So I was fully expecting them to win this game. And they pretty much controlled the fourth quarter. What were your guys' thoughts on this one?
You feel for Alabama because their 2 best wide receivers were out. They lost one a couple weeks ago, and then they lost their best wide receiver a couple weeks ago, and then they lost another one yesterday to another ACL tear. So you feel for that. I mean, granted, it's Alabama; they can reload, whoop-de-doo, but at the same time, you're like, damn, that kind of sucks. But it was a great game. I mean, it was a hard-fought game, good defensive game. I love what both teams do from like scheme-wise. They both do a lot of it's a lot of movement. I mean, some of the shit that Georgia does with like their no huddle and quick huddle and their RPOs, and it was a lot of attacking the edge from both teams, which was also awesome to see. It's something that Michigan, I feel like, didn't do against Georgia, and then we really fucked up, and Georgia did that to Michigan, and it just destroyed us. So it's a pretty good game. That D tackle from Georgia is a large mammal. That very first, that sack where Bryce Young fumbled, well, ended up being incomplete, but he fumbled. He like engulfed Bryce Young. It was pretty amazing to watch. Even Maddie was like, holy shit, look at the size of that guy. And he's 26 years old. He's 26.
What do you guys?
Really? Yeah, look it up. He's 26 years old.
Just 6 years, 7th year senior. Good Lord.
I don't know.
What do you guys think about the fact that in these 2 games that Alabama and Georgia played this year, they had a combined 1,300 yards passing?
Well, because neither of them could run the ball on each other.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Alabama had 30 yards rushing the first time they played, and this time around they ran the ball for 115, but both teams, could not run the ball on each other. Do you think that's a testament to their defenses, their defensive line linebackers? Do you think it's just showing that they didn't have that stronger running games? Does it show that the SEC is going towards more explosive quarterback-oriented offenses like the NFL?
I think you see it from when Michigan played them. Their D-line, like Georgia's D-line, is so elite. It's just like they have 8 guys who are better than
studs.
Everybody you play. So that would be my 2 cents.
I think ultimately when you can't run the ball and you're getting a little bit of momentum passing the ball, you just don't go back to running the ball because it stalls your offense. And when you're passing the ball, both Bryce Young and Stetson Bennett, they got a little bit of wiggle to them. They can roll out of the pocket. They can run away from the rushing linebacker. You can get yourself in some one-on-one situations with your wide receiver on a DB, or if he's rolling out, potentially just let the quarterback run for a first down, which we saw a couple times with Stetson Bennett. Yep. Alabama linebackers bailed and he ran up the middle for like a 10, 15-yard gain.
Yeah, he did that a few times.
He's got wheels.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vince, to answer your question, I think it's more a testament to the quarterback play on each of the teams. The quarterback play was just stellar. I would sit down and watch those teams play 100 more times. That was such an entertaining game. There's so much speed, so much talent, some of the catches being made. Like no no catch was really an easy catch yesterday. I mean, almost everything was challenged by a defensive back. The running backs, they run hard, they run through people. The play in the trenches was phenomenal. I loved watching that game. It was really entertaining.
Two best teams in the country.
Well, that's what you want in the championship.
We'll debate that a little bit more here later in the episode because I was kind of saying that half seriously, but couple more stats that stood out to me from these because these teams played twice was the team that won both times they played had more penalty yards. In the SEC championship, Alabama had 85 penalty yards to Georgia's 45 and won. In the national championship game, Georgia had 70 penalty yards to Alabama's 57 and won. And then the losing team lost the turnover battle. That tends to be the tale of some of the games like this. When you have two teams that are this good, usually the team that wins won the turnover battle. Georgia had 2 turnovers to Alabama's none in the SEC championship. In the college football playoff championship game here, national title game, Alabama had 2 interceptions and Georgia had 1 fumble.
One was a pick six, and that corner was hoofing it, or safety. I think it was a corner.
Pick six,
but that dude
pretty much sealed the game.
Kirby Smart's
so
like,
fat.
get out, get out. And he said like all the way, and he went in the end zone. He's like, he just threw his hands up like, screw it.
He was
funny.
Humping it. Did you guys see how? I mean,
at that point in the game, wasn't there only like 60
yeah,
seconds? Wasn't there only like 60 seconds left anyway when he?
Yeah, I think there was about a minute left.
I mean, what were they going to score 15 points in 60 seconds? I mean,
did you see the guy who had the 5-team parlay? It was kind of a mixture of NFL, and it was last week's NFL and the national title game, and he picked Georgia, and it was on the money line of the Georgia game. Was the last leg of the parlay. $30,000 down. He won like $1.2 million.
Holy crap!
And he was at the game, like in a suite. And when they did the pick six, there's a video of him like, he's like, I gotta see it. And his friends are like losing their mind because they're like, holy shit.
Was he the guy that went streaking on the field?
Maybe. I have no idea.
I would.
Someone went streaking.
Somebody got caught. Some Georgia fan got caught running on the field. I don't know if he was trying to streak
naked
or what. I don't know. Typically they don't show. There's a slight delay between real time and the actual TV cameras to take a buffer out if someone's running across butt naked.
Don't want another Janet Jackson at the Super Bowl.
Apparently,
No.
Miley Cyrus
Did it on New Year's.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
She did
Yeah.
what?
Her titty was out, I thought.
No, it was her butt.
Oh.
Maybe her
I'd
titty
say-
came out too. I just saw
I
it.
was sick with COVID on New Year's Eve. I went to bed. I didn't watch anything. All right, guys. One more thing, unless you guys have something else you add. The last thing I want to add here is I will be watching Nick Saban speak live at the Lansing Center on Friday at the MHSFCA Coaches Clinic. Very excited about that. He is speaking at 11 a.m. Right after Mel Tucker and Tony Anise. Pretty excited about that lineup. I get to watch Tony at 9, Coach Anise, Mel Tucker at 10 a.m., followed by Coach Saban at 11 a.m. So it'll be an exciting 3-coach lineup there. I'm going to have to get my seat early, get there nice and early. So
Bring your popcorn.
Bring a cooler.
Make sure you wrap the GLSF ball when you're there.
We don't have our T-shirts yet. We got to get our
Maybe
shirts
get some
made
side
here.
interviews. I'm sure you got a white undershirt with some stained armpits you can wear.
I can draw on it with marker, GLSF.
Have Calvin make it for you.
Oh, man. All right, moving on here. One of the last topics we're going to discuss before we get into a little bit of a discussion debate here regarding playoff systems, playoff formats. We got to talk about our bowl pick'em. So we did our podcast obviously started in November, so it hasn't been out too long. And we decided to put out a bowl pick'em. We had 55 people join. Thanks to everyone who played. And we have a winner. Chris James won by 1 point over me, Mr. Vincent Cook here, and Aaron Tuck. Aaron Tuck and myself, we tied for second at 28 and 10, and Chris James won it at 29 and 9. He picked 29 of the games correctly.
He was in the 99th percentile overall.
Me, Chris, and Aaron were all 99.9 percentile. So we had pretty good picks there. Kyle Johnson, Zach Willoughby were the immediate runners up after that. So thanks for everyone who played. Appreciate it. We haven't talked about this yet, but probably do a March Madness bracket as well. I would think, maybe.
Yep.
We'll be getting to that in a few weeks here, couple months coming up quick. All right. So thanks for everyone who played that. Bull Pick'em is all done. So moving into a segment here that we're probably going to start doing in every episode going forward for the time being, with football pretty much done here for the next significant portion of time, next several months. Obviously, we're not going to have any football to really talk about until August, any current football. So we're going to probably start doing some debates here, bringing up some discussions. So today we are going to talk about the NCAA playoffs. In particular, the biggest debate and topic of discussion is the FBS, Division 1A. Playoffs has been seriously criticized for years. I was not alive before 30 years ago, so I don't know what people's thoughts were on decades ago about the fact that there was no true national champion. How I don't know about you guys, Kory and Brett, but I'm sure we'll get into this. I think it's so stupid how basically people claimed national championships for decades, but there was never really a true way to determine a national champion in college football. The BCS championship series, got us a little bit closer to determining one, and now we're even closer to the 14 playoff. Division 2, Division 3, and FCS have all had tournaments since the 1970s, have been determining national champions for almost 50 years now, or around 50 years, and yet the second highest level of football still does not have a way to determine a national champion. Even the NFL has determined a champion with a playoff system for 100 years or however
every
long.
sport the NCAA has, Division 1 has a national championship.
They are also all sanctioned by the NCAA. Major college football is the only one where the NCAA doesn't sanction a postseason. Yeah. So Brett, Kory, who wants to kick this off here?
First off, let's step back a second. What is the whole entire purpose of a championship? The goal is to get the two best teams to play each other, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that the goal? Okay.
And so I do
determining a national champion, right? That's what you're just asking.
And I'll give the NCAA credit. They do that with our current playoff format.
Exactly. And I will say right now, there is no need to expand the playoff, and we can open the floor from there. There's no reason.
There's no need. I agree. There's no need. It isn't like this has to happen.
The way the NCAA is currently set up, it is expanded, because in most cases, if you win the majority of your games, except for maybe one or potentially two, but if you win your conference with one loss, you're going to be in the playoff as a Power 5 school. So essentially, you're in the playoff there. And the whole goal is to get the two best teams to play each other. The goal, football will never be like college basketball. You're never going to have where a small
true
school,
upsets.
Yeah, you're never going to have a true upset. You're never going to have a Central Michigan beat Alabama or a Clemson. It's just never going to happen. The dynamic of the sport is so much different. And I understand other levels of sports, or football rather, have different ways of having a championship. But I mean, ultimately, no other level of football has a conference championship like FBS does. Like, why do they have an FBS? Like, why in FBS do you have a conference championship every year? No other level of football has that. And it's essentially, it's a feeder into the playoff. And I do agree, it ruins the rest of the bowl games. It kind of takes away from the intrigue. But to be honest with you, the ratings are still super high on bowl games. Yeah, players might opt out, but people are still watching the bowl games, because if they didn't, things would drastically change and they would remove those. So I personally, I know it gets old watching SEC teams playing the championship, but if you look at the last 20 years, there's been the last 10 years rather, there was less SEC teams that have won in the last 10 years than the previous 10 years before that. That was with the BCS. The SEC was still dominating. So it doesn't make a difference. And I think if you expand the playoff to 8 or 12 teams, 9 times out of 10, or probably 99 times out of 100, you're still going to have a Bama and a Georgia that are going to roll the competition and get to the playoffs.
I do think it would create some cool dynamic, though, to expand it to the Power 5 and like 3 floating, just the 3 next best.
Absolutely. And I think it'd be great to have these games, but I don't think you're going to have any new national champions.
So
I just don't.
Here's my thought process. I'll ask a question first. Why? And this is a rhetorical question. I know the answer, but I want one of you guys to answer. Why can't Central Michigan beat Alabama?
Because they're not playing at the same level.
Why are they not at the same level?
Because they get rolled every time they play a team like that.
Why?
But it's because
they
not
risk getting
promoted
injured.
the same. No, it's because they're not promoted
money.
the same.
Because why, Kory?
I would say it's because they're not promoted the same. They're not promoted at the same level of
It's
fame.
It's not even that. It's because they're not getting the same talent level.
Yes.
I thought one of you would say it. It's because they're not getting the same talent level, right? Mid-major schools do not get 4 and 5 star recruits. Sometimes, maybe every great once in a while, right? But
you are seeing that in basketball now.
So this is my argument. Why are 4 and 5 star recruits not going to mid-major schools? There's a couple reasons. One, it has to do with brand, like you just said, Kory, right? National brand, money, exposure. And the other reason is an opportunity to win a national championship at the highest level, right? How do you change something like that? Or how does that landscape begin to change? Well, one is the NIL. This new NIL thing and the transfer rule, I really do think 10 years from now, college football is going to have been affected greatly by the NIL. I think another thing that could change the landscape of college football and be an argument for the college football playoff is if you create an expanded college football playoff, and depending on what your stipulations or what your criteria for making the playoff are, you may change the landscape in recruiting, because like you just mentioned, Kory, you are seeing 4 and 5 star recruits going to smaller basketball schools. And I get those two sports are way
even
different.
football, Jackson State.
Yeah.
You just got another one Jackson State did.
And football and basketball are way different. I get that. But I think one of the things that people don't understand is some 5-star recruit like Amani Bates, and Memphis isn't doing very well, but this is just an example. Like an Amani Bates could go to Memphis, and Memphis has the potential to win a national championship. Will they? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. But they have the chance. If you are a 5-star recruit as of right now, and you go to Central Michigan, you don't even have the opportunity to play for a national championship, which there is no other level of football where that is true. There's no other level of football where that is true. Every other level of football, every team has an opportunity if they go undefeated or have an almost undefeated season to go and play for a national championship. The second highest level of football doesn't have that. The highest level of football has it, the NFL. And again, I get the NFL is different. It's not exactly the same thing, right? They don't have a conference championship game. They do. It's part of the playoffs, which we can get into this. I think the conference championship games in FBS are stupid. I don't think we should have them. I think they should eliminate them. And if it's just like in basketball where you have co-champions, you have co-conference champions. They did that for years in football. Why not continue that? Right. And then if you expand the playoffs, those games don't really matter anymore, or you can use them as play-in games. I don't know. There's no right or wrong answer here, but I personally am for. If you look at all the New Year's 6 bowl games, imagine if those were all playoff games. I just think that would be a far, and I will agree with Brett to a degree. Would Georgia probably still have won the whole thing? Yeah, probably. But I think if you expand the playoffs, I think over time, maybe not the first year or 2, but over time, I think the landscape of football evens out, because I think recruits go, hey, I can go to Washington State, or I could go to maybe even Nevada. I don't know. I could go to a Mountain West school. This Mountain West team goes undefeated, wins their conference championship. Maybe like Cincinnati, they get an at-large bid and go to the college football playoff.
I think that's a great way to look at it too, because we've had a lot of those teams, like a Boise State who played Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl back in the day.
TCU
A UCF,
before, when TCU was mid-major. Yep.
UCF claimed a national title when they went undefeated a couple years ago. They went 13-0. So I do think it opens up the playing field to everybody. It might also
It's
help.
just more exciting. It's more exciting.
True.
It's more fun.
It also might help the coaches going like everywhere right now. I feel like in college, like coaches are like whores. They're like literally with one school, then they go to another school because the money is so much different all over the place, which I think this isn't immediate. It would take It would take probably 10 to 15 years for this to like actually transcend the game in recruiting and that kind of stuff. But imagine the money they would make if you had the New Year's 6 games and then a full-fledged playoff that would be made. Every stadium would be packed.
I think the New Year's 6 games, those would be the playoff games, though.
Exactly. But you'd have maybe 2 more if they expanded to 10 or 12 or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I think you're just going to have the same problem you already have. You're just going to make it, instead of a handful of 6 teams that are always making the 14 playoff, you're going to have 12 teams making the 18 playoff or 14 making the 12 team playoff. You look at college football from top to bottom, it's essentially the same 2 or 3 teams that are winning their conference championships every year. There's never.
Yeah, but that goes back to what I was saying. There's a reason.
I know. Just hold on a minute. I'm not done. But what? I didn't interrupt you. The thing is, you said, why can't Central has nothing to play for? Okay, but if you have a 12-team playoff or an 18 playoff, you're not gonna have any other bowl games. So those teams are never going to have
those
a
bowl games are so stupid.
Yeah,
there's
but Vince,
nothing else like that in sports that exists where a 6-win team has a postseason game.
But Vince, what you don't understand is you're thinking Power 5 football. For the smaller schools, those kids love playing in bowl games. It's their one chance to play on ESPN. And
you're still taking bowl games.
You're taking that away from them. You're going to make it even more irrelevant than they already are. The whole purpose of a playoff would be to just this is the postseason of football.
Exactly. Yeah, like and every other level.
Why would you have any other bowl games? It's just like
every Hillsdale's
bowl. It's like the bowl game that Hillsdale played this year. How stupid was that? There was an NCAA playoff they didn't make, and they're playing a bowl game. No one wanted to play in that game, so that's what you want. That's what you want in NCAA football. You want to watch Alabama beat Cincinnati or whoever they're going to play by like 40 points. You think that's fun to watch? And you're just going to watch them steamroll to the playoffs?
How many teams are in the D2 playoff? 32?
28.
Yeah, 32.
28.
28.
Yeah, the one season.
But you'd have teams like San Diego State, Louisiana, Houston, NC State, Wake Forest.
Oh, you're saying if they had as big a
if
playoff
they
as
expanded
D2 or
BYU, Pittsburgh, Utah State, Oklahoma State, and then normally it gets into normal Power 5.
I also think
so.
I'm not saying there will ever or even should be a 28 or 32 team playoff at D1A, but if there were, you also have the effect or the idea that a team has to win 4 or 5 straight games to be crowned a national champion, and that exists at every other level of every other sport for every other postseason except for D1A football, where they have to win 4 or 5 games, or what NFL's 3, you win 3 games unless you don't get that by 4 games. Think every level of every other sport. You got to win. Think about high school football. You got to win 5 games to be a state champion. High school basketball, you got to win 7 to be a state champion. I know these are different, these are different leagues, different levels, but I just think that is relevant across all sports, every level, that you have to win 4 or 5 games or more to be crowned the champion at the highest level. How come in football? And I get part of it's because they play a 12-game schedule and then 13 if you play a conference championship, but then that's why I would argue get rid of the conference championship game, cut it down to 10 or 11 games. Yeah.
2 non-conference.
I think, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying at all, but from a viewership standpoint, that'd be great.
It's all about money. Yeah.
But if you're trying to just get the 2 best teams to play each other, the system's not broke. We have that every single year. The system is not broke.
No, I agree.
Since the 14
I would
playoffs,
argue it is.
How? I mean, since
You
the
you have undefeated teams not playing for a national championship. UCF.
Since the 4-team UCF, Vince, I mean, they're UCF. Quite frankly, they're not going to win.
You don't know that though. But you don't know that because we don't have.
They do have the
format for
right.
it.
They do have the right.
They don't
being
have the
undefeated.
opportunity for it. That's my argument. Like if they lost, great. Then Brett, I would say you're right. Look at that. They got their asses kicked, but the opportunity isn't even there. If you
Cincinnati
go undefeated,
just had the opportunity.
Correct. And I think they played them as well as anyone played Alabama all year. Alabama had one of their lowest total scoring games of the entire season against Cincinnati. Cincinnati proved they belonged there.
I don't think they proved they belonged there. They lost by quite a bit.
I mean, so does that mean Michigan didn't prove they belong there? They got beat worse by Georgia.
No, it just proves that the better teams are on a whole nother level compared to everybody else, and there's no reason to even play any other games.
I feel like you're arguing for no championship at all.
No, I mean,
we're going back to the BCS.
I feel like you're going backwards.
That's fine. I mean, the playoff.
If the best team wins, the best team wins. That's fine. I agree with you on that. If the best team wins, the best team wins. I'm saying there needs to be a path for that team to say, hey, we earned this national championship. We beat 3 or 4 of the best teams in the country. There's no debate. There's no arguing. But when you have a team like UCF who went 13 or 14-0 and doesn't even get the opportunity, they beat Georgia or something that year. Who they beat? They beat a really good team in their bowl game, and they don't even get an opportunity to play for a national championship. I think that's a broken system.
Georgia had people that opted out of that game, so you can't really compare apples to apples. I mean, I'm just telling you. We said at the beginning of this, the whole purpose is to get the 2 best teams to play each other. And that's what you said too. It's not about viewership.
I agree, yeah.
And if you want to play for a championship,
I think the 2 best teams should be
you're probably not going to have a good chance if you don't go Power 5. And they accept that. 2
best teams though should be battle tested on a path that was challenging and nationally challenging. They played the 3 or 4 best teams from around the country, and if they dominate all 3 or 4 of those teams,
they beat Auburn. UCF beat Auburn in 2017, 34-27.
And didn't Auburn beat Alabama that year?
Auburn was number 10.
They beat Alabama that year.
I don't know.
They did. Auburn beat Alabama that year. That was why UCF claimed to be the national champion. But I think we're almost there. I don't think Division 1A, I'm totally in agreement that Division 1A does not need a 32-team playoff because you're right, Brett. There's 4 or 5 or 6 teams that would dominate every year in that. But I think an 8 or 12-team playoff, there's an easy argument for that because every year, maybe not every year. Okay, maybe not. I will say this, maybe not every year, but at least every 2 or 3 years, there is a team that gets left out who had a legitimate argument to be in the playoffs. And
sorry to interrupt. Auburn lost to Clemson second week of the year that year, 6-14. Clemson won the national title that year. Auburn beat Alabama 26-14 when Alabama was number 1.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
that's what I'm saying, though.
I mean,
UCF that year should have had a chance to play for a national championship. And Brett, maybe they lose. Maybe they get their ass.
But the thing is, they're playing like your ex-girlfriend's sister's stepdad's tunnel buddy every single game of the season on their conference schedule.
They beat Auburn.
Who gives a shit? You know just as well as I do, Vince. One game doesn't define your entire season.
That's why you should play 4 or 5 playoff games.
No, it's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. One win doesn't define your season. But when you beat everybody on your Power 5 schedule, game in and game out, you play in the SEC or the Big Ten, you beat all those ranked teams on your schedule, and then you get to a 14 playoff and you win the semifinal game and win the championship. I don't know how you can have a harder path, and you throw in a conference championship in there too. I mean, it's essentially a playoff.
It's not UCF's fault though that they have a shitty conference.
Yeah, that's not their fault, but they're still playing the highest level of college football.
It's not the highest level. It's not FBS. It's Division I, but they're not playing in Power 5 conference, so it's not the highest level.
But they beat Auburn.
So then maybe this is a different argument. Should
Michigan
FBS
State beat Michigan this year? Is Michigan State better than Michigan this year?
So do you think the FBS should be split up again? Should there be another division? Should they create a separate mid-major division
that would be a better option, 100%.
Where the Power 5 teams, maybe they have an 8-team playoff, or the Power 5 champions and 3 at-large teams play each other, and then the mid-major teams have a different postseason.
I think that would 100% make more sense.
How many football conferences are there? Probably
10.
12, 10.
There's Power 5 and 5 mid-major.
What if you just do everybody who wins their conference championship?
That's my argument.
My argument
is 12 teams, all 10 conference champions and 2 at-large teams, but no one would ever agree with me on that.
I think you keep it Power 5 and you keep it Small 5. I mean, it's going to be.
I would watch that if they had like a Small 5 playoff and a Power 5
playoff. Then you're losing your recruits. Now nobody's going to go play at the Small 5.
Not really, because people are going to play for the Small 5. They're going to get just as much exposure, and they can still get a ring.
Well, they can still play each other.
It might create more parity having it that way, because it's not so top heavy, and these teams have a chance.
Well, it's just like FCS schools can play Power 5 and mid-major schools.
No. I'm saying from a recruiting, though, kids won't go to the smaller D1. They'll want to go to the big D1.
Well, they're going to want
to, but that's still the case.
Still the case, and I think you're still going to have some big guys stay home, because it's like, okay, well, I can still play for a natty.
That's still the case right now. I mean, everyone's going to choose Power 5 no matter what, unless there's some crazy reason.
Long story short, this isn't going to happen. They just came to a conclusion that they're going to wait until 2025. So we're here.
Is that 100% official? That they
that's
they announced it during the game last night too. If my argument is there's to expand the playoff to allow a mid-major to win the playoff is not a good reason, and that's why I think it should stay 4, because the best teams are always in the playoff. I mean, okay, UCF. Yeah, they're a great team. Don't get me wrong, but let's be real. They're not going to go in a playoff system. They're not going to go head to head with a big boy and take him down. It's just not going to happen. And
UCF's a bad example, but I can see where you're going.
Yeah,
UCF beat Auburn handedly, and Auburn ran it close to Clemson and beat Alabama.
Because I think the opportunity should be there is my argument. I agree with you that there's probably a good chance they will lose. I just think if they're all in the same level of football, because I know you are arguing they're not, Brett, and I would agree with you there that mid-major and Power 5 technically really should be 2 different divisions. They should have their own. Now that we've brought this up, I think there should be 2 separate playoffs, but there's not. In an ideal world, maybe, but there's not. So because they are technically in the same level of football, and there's 130 something 1A schools, I just think 4 teams is stupid. I mean, I think there should be more. And for a long time, you're probably going to see same teams dominate. But I think if you expand it over time, the landscape will shift, because teams can go, hey, we have an opportunity to play. They can use that as a recruiting tool. Hey, if we bring enough so-and-so star recruits here, maybe we go undefeated like UCF or Cincinnati, and we go to the college football playoff. We got a better chance now because 12 teams can get it. I don't know. It would take time. It would take time, but
I have 2 things to say. Going back to your mid-major, Cincinnati made the playoffs this year. They beat 3 Power 5 schools in the regular season. They gave Notre Dame their only loss of the year.
At Notre Dame too.
Yeah, and they beat Wisconsin, who almost won the Big Ten West, and Indiana, who's still a Power 5 team. And then they still lost by 21 points to Alabama in the playoffs. So, I mean, if we're comparing games and schedules, Cincinnati's schedule was stronger than UCF's that got left out. And then also, I would say,
are they in the same they're both in the American, aren't they? I think.
Huh?
Aren't they both in the American? They're in the UCF and Cincinnati in the same conference. Yeah.
Although Cincinnati is changing the Big 12.
But go ahead, Brett.
College football is a little different now. I don't know. I guess I don't really know a lot of 18-year-olds in my life right now that are high-level prospects.
You don't hang out with a lot of 18-year-olds?
Yeah. Fortunately not. But if you're 18, if I put myself back in my 18-year-old shoes, I'm young, dumb, full of cum, and I I have the opportunity to go play Power 5 football. I can go to Alabama and win a national championship and potentially start, or I can go to South Carolina and get paid $500,000 a year and probably start. I'm probably going to go to South Carolina. I mean, I think this NIL thing is really going to change the way kids are thinking. It's not going to be so.
It's going to ruin college football.
It was already about money. It was already about money.
It was about money. Now
it was just the wrong people were profiting off of it. The people that weren't playing the game were making all the money. Now the kids playing the game get to make the money, which good for them. It may ruin the sport, but
I don't know. It's gonna be hard to ruin football. There's so much people that are invested in it. People are just gonna ride the highs and the lows of football. But I don't think kids are choosing schools for the national championship now. I think it's for other selfish reasons.
So how do you guys feel about like the 06 Boise State team who upset Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl? Do you think a team like that should be allowed?
Correct. I agree. They should have been allowed to play for a national title.
They got lucky on their Statue of Liberty play.
They beat Oregon State, a bunch of really random whack teams, and Utah State, Nevada. So
I'm surprised Boise State has never moved into like the Pac-12.
I think they would struggle potentially because
probably Idaho boys.
Yeah, it's different when you're playing a big school every single week. You don't really get a break. And that's another thing that too, as far as the playoff system, if you're going to keep the playoffs how it is, which is how I think it should be, you absolutely need to enforce who teams are playing in their non-conference schedule. Like the SEC teams, it's like, I don't know, the third week in November, and they're playing South Carolina School of the Deaf.
Yeah.
And the rest
so stupid.
They're playing Mercer. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. They play a scrimmage near the end of their schedule. That is another argument for the playoff. They
on top of their bye.
Cut down the regular season. That's a game that does not need to exist. Does not need to exist.
Or force them to play somebody from their own level of football. I mean, look at Alabama in that national championship game last night. Alabama never really has injuries. I mean, last year Jalen Waddle got injured, but last night Alabama had their two number one and number two wide receivers hurt. Their other wideouts were dropping balls. I mean, they looked a little bit vulnerable, and that would never happen to Bama late in the season because they get that health week where it's pretty much when everyone's getting tired and injuries start to happen because your body's getting worn down. And it's like, okay, well, we're just going to sit our starters this week and rest them up for the SEC championship. It's BS.
Yeah, it's stupid. I hate it.
Meanwhile, the Big Ten is done playing their non-conference schedule the third week of September.
And the Big Ten rarely plays FCS schools. I remember seeing a graphic on ESPN a couple of years ago.
I think they learned from Michigan losing to App State.
Oh yeah, there was a graphic. I remember I was watching a football game, a Big Ten game. It might have been Michigan State, and they put this graphic up on the screen, and they were talking about what you were just saying, Brett. It was the total number of FCS schools played by SEC schools compared to how many of those schools that the Big Ten was playing. And it was like SEC schools played double as many combined. Like all their teams combined had like 20 something games against FCS schools because all of them played at least one or even two FCS schools in the season, every single team. And then the Big Ten had like maybe one apiece, maybe.
The difference in the athlete is terrifying also. Like you might have a couple guys on those FCS rosters that like could potentially go to one of those Power 5 schools and like potentially compete for a starting spot, maybe after like 2 or 3 years. Those guys at Alabama and all the other SEC schools are like NFL caliber players playing college football just to get through to go to the NFL.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
And you feel bad taking that away from the FCS schools because it's always a cool opportunity to go to Bryant-Denny Stadium and play at Alabama from a small school, and your school gets paid out quite nicely. But it's for the sake of the game. I mean, it's stupid.
Brett, did Big C get a whole bunch of free shit at the D2 bowl game?
I think he had a new pair of gloves, which he was pretty pumped about. Because normally they give you 2 pairs of gloves at the start of the season, and there you go.
2? I only ever got 1.
Oh, he got practice gloves and game gloves.
So did I.
They're getting
So did
bougie.
And then obviously they have their 3 jerseys. They really, he wasn't wearing any of his stuff when I seen him. I think it was a pretty dud of a bowl game, if you want to call it.
Not a whole lot of money in the Boone Farms Indiana Bowl or whatever.
In Hobart, Indiana.
Hobart, Indiana.
America's Crossroads Bowl.
We're getting $100. You're getting Subway today.
They just got fed. That was their.
He was pretty pumped though because for social distancing and stuff. Well, it was like the last 3 or 4 games of the year. He was always, because he was a senior, he was upgraded to a king room by himself, so he didn't have to have a roommate. He got a king bed because they're trying to keep their seniors and everyone distanced at hotels. So
Jeez, that must have cost them a fortune to do that. Because
I'm sure they rack up a lot
price.
of hotel points though.
Yeah.
That's true. They probably do. Well, all right.
Yeah.
Do we want to add anything else here on the playoff discussion? Otherwise, I think we've kind of exhausted.
The Lions
this
won
topic.
again. Bitch.
So wait a minute, where do we leave off? Or we're cool with that with 4 teams. So all right, good.
No,
I don't know if we really came to a conclusion. I don't know.
There's no
Kory, do you argue for an expansion or not?
Yeah, I want an expansion. I want at least 8 teams. Power 5 and 3.
I just like 12 because I think the top 4 do deserve a bye. I think if you're one of the 4 best teams in the country, you should get a bye in the playoffs. That's why I think 12. If you did 8, then there wouldn't be a bye. But I guess if there was 8, though, you'd only play 3 games anyway, right? 1, 2, 3 games.
I mean, as a fan, I'm not going to be opposed if the playoffs expands, but my stance is I just don't think it's necessary given the recent results and the best teams seem to be playing every single year.
Well, we'll see what happens. As of right now, like we mentioned, it looks like the latest news is they are currently being held up by one member of the committee, which reported by The Sun, The Spun by Sports Illustrated is reporting that the Big Ten commissioner is the holdup. Kevin Warren apparently is the one person holding up the expansion of the college football playoff. So the current deal is for the next 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So, or 4 seasons, 2022, 3, 4, 4 seasons. It's through the 2025 season.
We just finished 22.
It says through
3,
the 2025
4,
season though. So wouldn't that be that fall?
Yes.
So 23, 24, 25, unless 26 is that year. I don't know.
22, 23, 24.
It's played in 26, but it's the 25. It's the 25 season.
That's what I'm saying. So it would
that
be
makes sense,
technically 4 seasons. So we'll see what happens. It sounds like they need a unanimous vote for them to change it before that time. And apparently that's not happening. So as of the time being, it sounds like we will continue to have a 4-team playoff. Here's to hopefully not a double SEC conference championship next year. So anyway, moving on here to our final topic before Kory gives us his recommendation of the week. Kory, in the words of G-Mac Cash,
The Lions won again, bitch. I said the Lions won again, bitch. We got the number 2 of the pick, bitch.
oh, we do
Well, very funny week in the NFL.
Really quick. So the
Go ahead,
Lions, just want to introduce it really quick. So the Lions, if you're not a Lions fan, which I would not blame you if you're listening, not a lot of people watch the Lions except psychopaths like us. I did watch this game. It was a lot of fun watching the Lions beat the Packers 37-30. Now, I will say, like Brett was talking about, sitting out of bowl games, obviously, Aaron Rodgers.
FCS Packers.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers sat, I believe, the whole second half. Quite a few of their starters did not play in the second half. But Kory, you'd probably agree with me, and maybe Brett too. You got to give the Lions credit, man. They could have just hung up their cleats and said, screw it, but they played their asses off.
Yep. They won 37-30. It was a good, hard-fought game. Funny week in the NFL because the fucking Jaguars ended up beating the Colts, so we could have had the number 1 overall pick, but
if the Colts won, they would have made the playoffs. They absolutely laid an egg.
That also, but no, I mean, I'm just happy to see the guys fighting for Dan Campbell. I'm excited for year 2. We had a really good draft class this past season, so hopefully this next one is equally as successful.
I think one of the things that sticks out to me on the stat sheet is discipline. For a Lions team that kind of struggled with finishing games all year, this team certainly finished. They had no turnovers to the 3 turnovers by the Packers. They had 2 penalties. They only gave up 1 sack, and they only punted the ball twice. That's impressive.
Well, Dan likes to go for it on 4th down a lot.
He was 2 of 3.
Right,
and he was the highest rated guy in the NFL this year on 4th down conversions.
He was.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it.
As far as calling 4th down conversions, the Lions just let go offensive coordinator Anthony Lynn yesterday. I'm going to be really curious to see who they bring in as an OC, because it sounds like Dan wants to continue calling plays going forward.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if maybe it's going to be a younger guy that's okay with taking the backseat to play calling, but more just kind of managing the logistics of the offense.
Do you think that's unusual in the NFL?
No.
To have the head coach be the primary play caller?
Sean Payton does it.
I would think Bill Belichick calls some too. They have the ultimate say.
Yeah, every
Harbaugh calls it too, doesn't he?
Does he?
John Harbaugh? Yeah. I think he does. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't
because
know
every head coach, we all know every head coach, like you said, Brett, has the final say and has, is giving input. But how many are sitting there with the call sheet, being the driving force down the field throughout a drive? I'd be curious to know how many Dan Campbell are doing that.
I can't imagine having control of the offense and trying to pay attention to everything else going on in the field. I mean,
you got to trust your staff.
I was going to say it's a testament to the trust he has in the other guys he's hired, which a lot of the other guys he's hired are younger guys and have NFL experience.
How old's Campbell? 40 something?
He played on the 0-16 team.
I don't even think he's 40.
I don't know.
I think he's early 40s. I don't know. He's not
old enough.
Old enough. But he's young enough at the same time where I think he relates.
45.
Yeah, 45 isn't that old. I mean, yeah, that team was 14 years ago, so
he's like the age 31. Of Tom Brady.
That's crazy to think about.
Who led the NFL in passing yards, touchdowns, completions, and attempts this year?
I think Tom Brady must be a part of the Illuminati or something, and he sleeps in a vat of special lotion or something, because that guy
has a crazy diet.
He looks like he's 30 years old.
Fuck like rabbits.
I apologize for my friend's fruity language here. If anyone's been watching Ted Lasso, we've been watching Ted Lasso. I love when there's swearing on TV and the British announcers go, "We apologize for our partner's fruity language here."
No, Lions finished good. I'm happy for him.
I'm excited for this. Is going to be a fun time. It always is. The NFL playoffs. I really enjoy watching the NFL through the season, but I find myself, now that I have a family, my day is pretty much Saturday, and I pay attention to college football, and Sunday is more of do stuff together.
Yep.
Day. And so Sunday was really the first day I watched the Lions from start to finish. And
I haven't done that much this year either.
I will say, this time of year with the NFL playoffs, it's always fun because there's no other football on TV, and some of the games are on Saturday, so it's fun to tune in to the NFL playoffs, and then after that talk about the NFL draft and so on and so forth. Next thing you know, you're in the season. But I just can't wait for the day when the Lions are relevant. I would say again, but they really have never been relevant.
Whoa. We've had some playoff games.
We haven't won a playoff game
30 years
in my lifetime. And
not one, but we've played in them.
Yeah, played in 2. I can't wait for the time when we are going to win a playoff game in the middle of January, and it is going to be awesome. I cannot wait.
Hopefully next year.
So I wouldn't get my hopes up, but yeah.
Well, so that gets me into something else I want to bring up before we finish the Lions here. What are your guys' thoughts here leaving this season behind? Obviously 3-13-1 is not a good season. I think it's better than some people thought. There was people predicting an 0-17 team. There was people saying the Lions will be the first team to ever go 0-17. It was looking that way for a while. They finished the season 3-3, which is pretty crazy. Their last 6 games, right? 3-3 over the last 6 games.
3-3.
I also think we should add, Kory, you can look up the official attendance, but I watched some videos of people circulating their camera around Ford Field on Sunday. It was packed. And there was people on Twitter talking about how Dan Campbell is already changing the culture. The fan base loves him and is invested in him, even after as bad a season as he had. Do you guys think there's any truth to this? What do you guys think about this kind of idea that he's already won over the fan base and the culture?
It's the fact that we're competing to the end. I mean, you guys remember back in like the early 2010s with Jim Caldwell and Jim Schwartz, the energy in Ford Field has always been amazing. I mean, we've had maybe 5 Monday Night Football games in the last 12 years. 15 years.
You and I watched one of them. It was that Green Bay Packers one with all the freaking hands to the face calls.
The atmosphere in Ford Field is just bonkers. And I think Dan Campbell is like the intelligent version of Jim Schwartz. Not saying Jim Schwartz is stupid, but just saying his antics are a little aggressive. But
like
I just think he's
who do you slap on the back?
Jim Harbaugh on the
Jim
back.
Harbaugh.
No, Jim Harbaugh slapped him.
Oh, that's
Jim
right.
Harbaugh slapped him. But no, I just think the people of Detroit believe in him, and it's fantastic. And he rattles off. I would say success next season is 500. If we can get to 500 and compete like we did this year and win 5 more games that we didn't win this year, I mean, I'd be happy with it.
There's just a lot of hype. I mean, like you said, that game on Sunday looked like the opening game of a season, and the Lions had just won. The place was packed. They're doing the wave around the stadium.
They were showing that on TV.
Fourth quarter, given all the injuries and the COVID outages that the Lions dealt with this year. I mean, Jared Goff only started 14 games.
Finished ranked in the top 10 in the NFL as a quarterback.
Yeah, and his improvement happened when Campbell was calling the play. The plays. But hold on, I'm gonna have to go off it.
COVID boy. Brett's getting some water. There you go. Clean that throat out, baby.
Bring it back, Daddy.
Okay. Sorry, pardon me. The play calling with Dan Campbell just upped Jared Goff's passer rating. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he kind of answered the question, do the Lions need to get a quarterback? No, but if one falls in their lap in the draft, you take it.
Speaking of the draft, this was the last thing I wanted to mention. How ridiculous was the discourse on Twitter on Sunday and Monday after the Lions won over this debate of them ruining their chance at a number 1 pick? I'm sorry, but I hate that conversation. That's so stupid.
I don't think it changes anything. 1 to 2.
Exactly. But so it's like, are these people arguing that the Lions just should have bombed their final game against a rival and just said, screw it, we're going to lose for the number 1 draft pick? Like, I hate that conversation. I think it's so stupid.
It's a bad take. That shouldn't.
It's a take from someone who doesn't play football.
Yeah.
Doesn't understand how much winning means to some of these people. Brett, I think you're muted.
You're muted, Brett.
It would be one thing if you went from the number.
No, you're good now. You're good.
It'd be one thing if they went from a number 1 pick and they went to the 20th pick, but going 1 to 2 or even 1 to 5 really isn't that big of a difference, especially in this year's draft.
Yeah.
If they're looking for a quarterback and them and the Jaguars where there's one clear-cut number 1 guy like a Joe Burrow, then yeah, that would make a little bit of a difference. But even in the Joe Burrow draft, Justin Herbert was still in that draft. So I mean, there's still always a nice second option. So no, I don't think going from 1 to 2 really makes a big difference at all.
I just hate the idea that people seemingly believe the Lions shouldn't compete, and I mean, we just mentioned they finished the season 3-3 with wins over 2 teams who had more than 10 victories. Did you guys see there was some crazy stat that was like the Lions were the first below 500 team to beat 2 teams who were 5 or more games above 500 in like ever, or like 40 something years. It was a crazy stat.
Yep.
Dan Campbell is the first Lions coach to win
I thought it was
2
NFL.
games against.
I thought it was NFL coach.
Oh,
To
the
win-
graphic got.
To win 2 games over 2 teams who were 5 or more games above 500 and be a team that was below 500 or something, like be that bad and beat 2 really good teams. It was a very obscure stat that just had to do with the fact that 2 of their 3 wins were against really good teams. That was really what it was saying at the end of the day.
Vince, you're
thought that was
chopping up
cool.
super bad, just a heads up, at least on my end.
Yeah, it's mine too. I didn't know if it was me or not, but no, I agree, Vince. It was still a really impressive stat. Another impressive fact is the last 2 times the Lions had the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, they drafted Calvin Johnson and Ndamukong Suh. So
3-peat,
promising.
baby, feed me. So, we'll
I'm
see
not
what
sure who
happens.
I want. I wanted Hutchinson, but I'm sure we'll talk about it as it gets closer and combine stats come out.
I think either one's a win-win. I don't think it matters.
Maybe we do a live episode reacting to.
We could do a
Draft.
let's live stream the draft.
Yeah,
That'll be fun.
that'd be
We
fun.
got an idea for an episode coming up. Well, all right. With that, I think we're going to wrap things up here with our second recommendation of the week. Last week, we started a new segment where every episode we will end it with one of us recommending anything that we feel is worthy of your time, whether that is watching, listening, or consuming. Last week, Brett recommended a beer from Brass Ring Brewing Company in Alger Heights, Michigan, and Grand Rapids. And this week, Mr. Kory Schraven, what are you recommending for us?
Yeah, so I've got a place that's close to our new house. We finally got a chance to go to. We took a friend there. And had a great time. So I am recommending the Vestal Inn. It's off of West River Drive. You go watch the West Michigan Whitecaps play. You just drive You just drive down West River Drive, about 2 miles, 3 miles, and bam, you'll this little. It's not even little. It looks like a VFW hall, and it is called the Vestal Inn. Very good burgers. I got the Fat Pat burger, pepper jack cheese, thick cut bacon, beer
Thick
battered
boy,
fries, beer cheese, chipotle aioli, served with loaded fries on
You
it.
pulled up the
and
fucking menu, didn't you?
oh yeah, it was unbelievable burger. I also felt my heart slow down. But no, if you're spending the day out on the town on the Beltline shopping, or if you're at the Whitecaps, swing through Comstock Park, Michigan, and go to the Vestal Inn. Very good food, very good beer, pool, awesome atmosphere, great bar. So that's my call out, the Vestal Inn.
Well, all right, you heard it here first. Vestal Inn over by what city? Did you say it was Grand Rapids address?
Comstock Park.
Comstock Park.
Comstock
All right.
Park.
Comstock Park, Vestal Inn. Check it out. Get a burger there. Get some French fries. All right. Well, that will just about do it for episode 8 of the Great Lakes State Football Podcast. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to check out a few idiots talking about football here in the beautiful Great Lakes State. After you are done listening or watching on your preferred platform, head over to Twitter, follow us at GLSF Ball, BALL, then head over to Instagram, give us a follow, Great Lakes State Football. Make sure if you have not already, head over to YouTube, subscribe, check out one of our episodes there. You can watch us. All of our episodes are video recorded on YouTube. Leave a comment, like, share it out for us. We'd appreciate it. We are on all of your favorite podcast stores, Apple, Spotify. Please make sure you leave a 5-star review there and comment. Tell us how much you love us. Appreciate it. And we'll be back next week talking about football. Not everything in the state of Michigan, because there's not a whole lot to talk about football right now, but we will be back with something interesting, I'm sure, to talk about. Until next time, I'm Vince. Oh, I thought you guys would just do it.
Kory,
Brett,
We'll work on
you're
that.
the bulldog.
go blue.
Go green, baby.